The point of order has been withdrawn. The amendment has been withdrawn. The chair recognizes Mr. Cook to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of SB 1936. This is a record vote. The clerk ring the bell. So Mr. Cook voting aye. Mr. Desatel voting aye. Mr. Reynolds voting aye. All members voting. There have been 144 ayes, 1 nay. SB 1936 is finally passed. The chair lays out on third reading SB 1921. The clerk read the bill.
SB 1921 by Lucia Land and Medicaid reimbursement for the provision of certain behavioral health and physical health services.
The chair recognizes Mr. Gann to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this allows for a payment model for those who are Medicaid managed care eligible but not yet fully enrolled. Move passage.
Question occurs on final passage of SB 1921. This is a record vote. The clerk ring the bell. So Mr. Gann voting aye. All members voting. There being 96 ayes, 50 nays, SB 1921 is finally passed. The chair lays out on third reading SB 2081. The clerk read the bill.
SB 2081 by Menendez related to the average ratio of students and teachers in a pre-kindergarten class.
The chair recognizes Mr. Tallarico to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is the Senate version of the House bill that we passed a couple weeks ago. It enacts the recommendations of the 2016 TEA Commission report on pre-K class sizes. I move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of SB 2081. This is a record vote. The clerk ring the bell. Show Ms. Theory voting aye. All members voting. There being 87 ayes, 61 nays. SB 2081 is finally passed. The chair lays out on third reading SB 248. The clerk read the bill.
SB 248 by Johnson related to the regulation of cigarettes, tobacco products, and e-cigarettes and the administration of taxes imposed on the sale or use of certain of those products requiring a permit, imposing a fee, providing administrative penalties.
The chair recognizes Ms. Theory to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, SB 248 modernizes and clarifies our statutes regarding e-cigarettes, tobacco, and tobacco-derived products to protect children from nicotine. I move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of SB 248. This is the record vote. The clerk ring the bell. Show Ms. Theory voting aye. All members voting. There being 97 ayes, 51 nays, SB 248 is finally passed. Ms. Collier? The chair recognizes Ms. Collier for motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to suspend House Rule 8, Section 5D for SB 1495 to designate the following members as joint sponsors: Meyer, Minahares, Rose, Sanford.
Members, you heard the motion. The objection. Chair hears none, so ordered. The chair lays out on third reading SB 1495. The clerk read the bill.
SB 1495 by Huffman relating to certain criminal offenses relating to highway motor vehicles, creating a criminal offense, increasing a criminal penalty.
The chair recognizes Mr. Turner to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, again, we've heard this session about how street racing and intersection takeovers become major problems, especially in our large cities. This bill by Senator Huffman would give law enforcement additional tools to deal with those events. Specifically, would raise the offense level to a Class A misdemeanor for obstructing a highway or street in furtherance of a reckless driving exhibition as defined in the bill, and various other provisions to try to deter these activities. I move passage.
The question occurred on final passage of SB 1495. This is a record vote. The clerk ring the bell. Show Mr. Turner of Dallas voting aye. Show Ms. Collier voting aye. Show Mr. Wilson voting aye. All members voting. There have been 136 ayes, 11 nays. SB 1495 is finally passed. The chair lays out on third reading SB 1696. The clerk read the bill.
SB 1696 by Paxton related to establishing a system for the sharing of information regarding cyber attacks or other cybersecurity incidents occurring in schools in the state.
The chair recognizes Mr. Wilson to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 1696 creates a system for TA to share cybersecurity threat intelligence information across school districts in coordination with the Department of Information and Resources. Move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of SB 1696. This is a record vote. The clerk ring the bell. Show Mr. Wilson voting aye. All members voting. There have been 146 ayes, 0 nays. SB 1696 is finally passed. The chair recognizes Ms. Click for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend House Rule 8, Section 5D for SB 968 to designate the following members as joint sponsors. Representative Button.
Members heard the motion. The objection, the chair hears none, so ordered. The chair lays out on third reading SB 2050. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 2050 by Menendez, relating to the prevention of and reporting of instances of bullying committed by public school students.
The chair recognizes Mr. Allison to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, Senate Bill 2050 is furtherance of existing law passed 2 sessions ago as David's Law dealing with bullying and cyberbullying in public schools. It provides for additional focus at the local schools, and including reporting incidents through the PEAM system. Move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of SB 2050. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. So Ms. Meza voting aye. Mr. Allison voting aye. All members voting. Ms. Click voting aye. There being 105 ayes, 42 nays, SB 2050 is finally passed. The chair lays out on third reading SB 1418. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 1418 by Schwertner, relating to the compensation of the presiding judge of an early ballot voting board.
The chair recognizes Mr. Wilson to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 1418 allows permission for a presiding judge of a ballot board to receive higher compensation than other board members. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage.
The following amendment, clerk read the amendment.
Amendment by Schofield.
The chair recognizes Mr. Schofield to explain the amendment.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Beckley, for what purpose?
I have a point of order against further consideration of the Schofield amendment under Rule 11, Section 2, because the amendment is not germane to the bill.
Please bring your point of order down front. The point of order has been withdrawn. The amendment has been withdrawn. The chair recognizes Mr. Wilson to close the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of SB 1418. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. So Mr. Wilson voting aye. So Ms. Click voting aye. So Mr. Rogers voting aye. All members voting. There being 140 ayes, 0 nays. SB 1418 is finally passed. The chair lays out on third reading SB 969. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 969 by Colcourse, relating to reporting procedures for and information concerning public health disasters and to certain public health studies, creating the Office of the Chief State Epidemiologist, providing a civil penalty.
The chair recognizes Ms. Click to explain the bill.
Members, this is a DSHS data collection bill with lessons learned from the onset of COVID. Mr. Speaker, I do have an amendment.
The following amendment, clerk read the amendment.
Amendment by Click.
The chair recognizes Ms. Click to explain the amendment.
Members, this amendment just extends the deadline in the bill to allow the agency a little more time to review and implement lessons learned, and adds the RACs into the conversation about best practice reporting. It is acceptable to the author, and I move adoption.
Ms. Weiner. Okay. Ms. Click, send the amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. The objection to adoption of the amendment. Chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. The chair recognizes Ms. Click to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage.
The question occurs on passage of third reading SB 969. The question occurs on final passage of SB 969. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Ms. Click voting aye. So Mr. Spiller voting aye. All members voting. There have been 142 ayes, 4 nays. SB 969 is finally passed. The chair lays out on third reading SB 984. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 984 by Schwertner, relating to public health disaster and public health emergency preparedness and response, including the operation of the Task Force on Infectious Disease Preparedness and Response.
The chair recognizes Ms. Click to explain the bill.
Members, SB 984 would require the Task Force on Infectious Disease Preparedness and Response to include an epidemiologist and to meet at least once a year. I move passage.
Question occurs on final passage of SB 984. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. All members voting. There have been 144 ayes, 3 nays. SB 984 is finally passed. The chair lays out on third reading SB 967. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 967 by Colcourse, relating to the expiration and extension of certain public health orders issued by a health authority.
The chair recognizes Ms. Click to explain another bill.
Members, SB 967 expires a public health order issued by a local health department after 8 days unless extended by an elected body. Mr. Speaker, I do have an amendment.
The following amendment, clerk read the amendment.
Amendment by Click.
The chair recognizes Ms. Click to explain the amendment.
Members, this amendment adds 7 days so that a public health order would expire on the 15th day unless extended. This is acceptable to the author, and I move adoption.
Ms. Click, send the amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author's objection to the adopted amendment. Chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. The chair recognizes Ms. Click to close on the bill.
I move adoption.
Question occurs on final passage of SB 967. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Ms. Click voting aye. All members voting. There have been 143 ayes, 4 nays. SB 967 is finally passed. The chair lays out on third reading SB 1059. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 1059 by Paxton, relating to the process for determining the Medicaid eligibility of certain former foster care youth.
The chair recognizes Ms. Click to lay out another bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. SB 1059 streamlines the recertification for former foster youth in the Medicaid program. I move passage.
Question occurs on final passage of SB 1059. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bill. Show Ms. Click voting aye. All members voting. There have been 137 ayes and 10 nays. SB 1059 is finally passed. The chair lays out on third reading SB 507. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 507 by Nichols, relating to an accommodation process authorizing the use of state highways, right-of-ways by broadband-only providers.
The chair recognizes Dr. Anderson to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, Senate Bill 507 allows for broadband expansion by utilizing TxDOT right-of-way. Move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of SB 507. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. So Dr. Anderson voting aye. All members voting. There have been 148 ayes, 0 nays. SB 507 is finally passed. The chair lays out on third reading SB 68. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 68 by Miles, relating to a duty for peace officers to intervene and to make a report when a peace officer uses excessive force.
The chair recognizes Mr. Reynolds to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 68 requires peace officers to intervene from stopping another peace officer from using excessive force, and I believe we do have one amendment.
The following amendment, clerk read the amendment.
Amendment by Kraus.
The chair recognizes Mr. Kraus to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, some of the associations brought to our attention that one of the provisions in the amendment we added last night was a little bit duplicative and superfluous, so we don't need it anymore. So this amendment is acceptable to the author, and I move adoption.
The following amendment, the clerk read the, pardon me. Mr. Kraus said the amendment, the amendment is acceptable to the author. The objection to the adoption amendment. Chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. The chair recognizes Mr. Reynolds to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I move final passage in memory of George Floyd.
The question occurs on final passage of SB 68. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. All members voting. There have been 130 ayes, 16 nays. SB 68 is finally passed. Ms. Beckley, for what purpose?
Yes, can I have the comments on SB 1036 between Representative Cook and Ramos reduced to writing and put in the journal? Thank you.
Members who heard the motion, the objection, chair hears none, so ordered. The chair lays out on third reading SB 598. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 598 by Colcourse, relating to audible voting systems.
The chair recognizes Mr. Jatan to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill deals with auditable voting systems, and I have an amendment.
The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Jatan.
The chair recognizes Mr. Jatan to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Busey, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield for some questions?
If you give me an opportunity to lay this out, I kind of want to explain the amendment since I didn't get the opportunity to.
Not at this time.
So yesterday during second reading, we did have to go through these bills pretty quickly, and so I just want to take a moment to try and explain this amendment. This amendment fills in some missing language in Title 8 concerning auditable voting systems. Because we are creating a new voting system, this amendment adds auditable voting systems to the list of definitions in Title 8 and a procedure for spot checking for voting the voting system. Those spot checks procedures are already on the books for non-DRE, which are the non-direct recording equipment, electronic systems in section 127.201, subchapter H, and they're called partial counts. We are adding those procedures to this new system that SB 598 is now defining and mandating to be used. Because this is a new system, that this amendment adds procedures to subchapter H to ensure their results. We already have those procedures in place for electronic voting systems. This amendment adds procedures for this new type of voting system to ensure the accuracy and tabulation of the system. Since the margin of error of this spot check is significantly greater than the margin of error of the machine, the spot check is only verifying the accuracy of the machines. A paper ballot recount will not trigger unless there is a significant error with the voting machines indicating indicating machine malfunction or fraud. And so with that, I'm willing to...
Mr. Busey, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield for some questions?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Representative, I just want to walk through this amendment a little bit. You're changing the current bill that we heard in committee. It looks like we're doing a new, different auditing process here with your amendment. Can you speak to why a partial audit would be needed if an official risk-limited audit will become law under your bill already?
Yes, so the risk-limiting audit is going to, on a statewide level, check for the accuracy. What we're trying to do is similar to what is already in statute, the 127.201, dealing with those partial audits, ensuring that there is a partial audit process for these new systems.
Let me ask you, why are we allowing, under this amendment, if I'm correct, are you allowing chairs of political parties the opportunity to select ballot boxes to be audited?
That is correct. So the goal with allowing the party to be involved in this process of identifying polling locations, we're allowing more local control and more, in my opinion, involvement from the grassroots and those voters and people involved in the political process to be engaged in this audit.
So if I'm correct, you're saying yes, the political parties will get to pick which machines are audited.
That's correct, and there's stipulation in there as to what percentage is between 2 and 10%. The Secretary of State will identify that based on the size of the counties, so that we are not doing entire counties for this audit, but a sufficient number of locations to ensure that we're identifying the machines worked correctly.
I guess what I worry about if they get to pick it and it's no longer going to be random, how do we avoid, biasness and that kind of thing by the individual party chair picking it?
So we're allowing both parties. And so both parties will have an opportunity to select the same number of locations.
Yeah. So both parties get to do it, but the individuals can still be biased, can they not?
That's accurate.
Isn't the goal to make sure this is random and that things are working smoothly?
So this is in addition to the risk limiting audit, which is a statewide capture of this. What we're trying to do is at the county level make sure that we have procedures in place that provide assurances to the general public that the system is working the way we want it to.
Let me ask again, tied on the amendment, how will it be determined if the partial count shows a discrepancy of more than 0.25% of the election result? Is this done by machine or is this across the board?
This will be based on the verification of the paper ballot backups, and the specifics of that would be defined by the Secretary of State.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you answering some of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bernal, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, does the gentleman yield?
The gentleman yield for questions.
Yes, sir.
He yields.
Thank you. I actually just have a question about one line of the amendment. I'm on the first page, lines 10 and 11.
Okay.
And so, and I may be reading it incorrectly, but the way I read it, it says an auditable voting system means a voting system that is not capable of being connected to the internet or any other computer network or electronic device. So if you're using an electronic voting machine and it can't be connected to another electronic device, how does that work? Because my understanding is it's either a thumb drive or whatever the device is that they give you when you're going to vote and you plug it into the machine, that's an electronic device. So the way I read it, the only thing that would be eligible would be paper ballots. Is that your understanding?
They're not connected.
Hold on.
Yeah, I think what we're defining on there is that it can't be connected to any internet device or to the internet, and so electronic device, internet to interconnecting that way. I don't think. Go ahead.
I have no doubt that that is your intent, but when we leave this building and a judge has to look at it, they're going to see it's not capable of being connected to the internet or, which is beyond the internet, any other computer network or electronic device. So any electronic voting machine that takes a thumb drive, that takes the little box that you get to vote, that would mean that machine is ineligible. The only thing that would then qualify is a paper ballot. Is that your understanding of the reading?
That's not my understanding. I understand your argument. I hear your argument. The intent of that was not to restrict the use of a thumb drive, but I do understand that. I do understand your concern. The intent is to make sure that it can't connect to the internet or it's not able to connect onto a network.
Right. So you would agree that maybe the drafting of the amendment doesn't comport with the intention that you have in the amendment? And would you agree that we should do something about that before we put it to a vote?
The amendment is withdrawn. Any member will speak for, against, or on the bill. The chair recognizes Mr. Jahan to close on the bill.
Move passage.
Question on final passage of SB 598. This is a record of vote. Clerk, ring the bell. Show me his click voting aye. All members voting. There have been 136 ayes and 8 nays. SB 598 is finally passed. Mr. Frank. The chair recognizes Mr. Frank for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to suspend House Rule 8, Section 5D for SB 500 to designate the following members. Theory. As joint sponsors. Theory.
Members, you heard the motion. The objection, chair hears none, so ordered. The chair recognizes Mr. White for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend House Rule 8, Section 5D for Senate Bill 68 to designate the following members as co-sponsors, Chairwoman Collier and Representative Theory.
Members, you heard the motion. Objection, chair hears none, so ordered. Members, as we wait, if you're looking for insurance, Mr. Holland works for Farmers Insurance today, and in the red jacket, Mr. Holland. If you need insurance, please talk to Mr. Holland. Thank you. State Farm, thank you. The chair is out on third reading SB 617. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 617 by co-course, wedding the regulation of certain direct sales of food to consumers and a limitation on the fee amount for certain permits.
Mr. Wilson. Is Mr. Wilson on the floor of the House? Chair will recognize Mr. Wilson to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, Senate Bill 617 is a cleanup bill clarifying the term producer in relation to farmers market, and I believe we have an amendment.
Mr. Canales, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, I didn't hear you earlier. Did you say State Farm or Farmers?
I don't know. It's just a good-looking jacket. That's all
Oh,
can say.
I was concerned since Farmers doesn't pay their claims, but if it's State Farm, it's good.
Following amendment, clerk read the amendment.
Amendment by Frank.
The chair recognizes Mr. Frank displaying the amendment.
All right, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker,
this is actually a bill that passed out
Ms.
of
Beckley,
Public
for
Health
purpose.
Committee.
I have a point of order against this amendment.
Oh.
Violates House Rule 11, Section 2, Texas of the Constitution. It's not germane.
Please bring your point of order down front. The point of order has been withdrawn. The amendment has been withdrawn. The chair recognizes Mr. Wilson to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of SB 617. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Wilson voting aye. Show Ms. Johnson of Harris County voting aye. Ms. Theory voting aye. Show Mr. Lamont voting aye. Mr. Harris voting aye. Show Ms. Collier voting aye. All members voting. There have been 146 ayes, 0 nays. SB 617 is finally passed. The chair is out on third reading. SB 768. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 768 by Huffman, relating to increasing the criminal penalties for manufacture, delivery of fentanyl and related substances and creating a criminal offense.
The chair recognizes Ms. Johnson to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, fentanyl is already a crime. All this does, it leaves the addicted individual at the same punishment level, but it increases that illegal sale of fentanyl, which is so lethal. It's accounting for some 57% of overdoses, and any first responder on scene can also be killed by this presence of the substance. Move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of SB 768. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. So Ms. Johnson of Harris voting aye. Mr. Rodriguez voting aye. All members voting. There have been 130 ayes, 12 nays. SB 768 is finally passed. The chair will out on third reading. SB 113. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 113 by West, relating to community land trust.
The chair recognizes Mr. Rodriguez to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill creates more clarity and consistency for appraisal districts and nonprofit housing providers regarding the appraisal of community land trusts and homes. Move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of SB 113. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. So Speaker Craddock voting aye. So Mr. Rodriguez voting aye. All members voting. There have been 85 ayes, 61 nays. SB 113 is finally passed. The chair lays out on third reading SB 149. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 149 by Powell, relating to the prosecution of the offensive operation of an unmanned aircraft over certain facilities.
The chair recognizes Mr. Goldman to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, Senate Bill 149 adds military installations to the definition of critical infrastructure to prohibit the operation of drones above and around these facilities. I move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of SB 149. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Ms. Bowers voting aye. All members voting. There have been 138 ayes and 6 nays. SB 149 is finally passed. The chair lays out on third reading SB 185. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 185 by Perry, relating to the time for rendering a final order in certain suits affecting the parent-child relationship involving the Department of Family and Protective Services.
The chair recognizes Mr. White to explain the bill.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Members, SB 185 establishes a 90-day timeline in which cases involving CPS parental termination must be completed. Move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of SB 185. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. White voting aye. Show Ms. Bowers voting aye. All members voting. There have been 143 ayes, 0 nays. SB 185 is finally passed. The chair lays out on third reading SB 225. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 225 by Paxton, relating to the regulation of child care facilities and family homes.
The chair recognizes Mr. Sanford to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill makes certain past violations and deficiencies remain associated with the individual caregiver in group daycare homes and registered family homes. Move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of SB 225. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Tender Holt voting aye. All members voting. So Ms. Bowers voting aye. There have been 141 ayes, 1 nay. SB 225 is finally passed. The chair is out on third reading SB 334. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 334 by Johnson, relating to disclosure to the public information law of certain records of an appraisal district.
The chair recognizes Mrs. Goodwin to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill provides access to data during the arbitration process of a property tax appraisal protest. Move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of SB 334. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. All members voting. There have been 144 ayes, 0 nays. SB 334 is finally passed. The chair is out on third reading SB 415. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 415 by Hancock, relating to the use of electric energy storage facilities in the ERCOT bioregion.
The chair recognizes Mr. Holland to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the battery storage facilities bill in the ERCOT power region. Move passage.
Mr. Moody, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to move that the hat Ms. Chen Button wore during her layout of SB 2181 be reduced to writing and placed in the journal.
Members, you heard the motion. The objection, chair hears none, so ordered.
Move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of SB 415. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. So Mr. Holland voting aye. Ms. Bowers voting aye. Ms. Bowers, do you have a desk anymore? All members voting. have been 131 ayes, 17 nays. SB 415 is finally passed. The chair is out on third reading, SB 500. The clerk read the bill.
SB 500 by Miles, relating to creating a criminal offense of operating a boarding home facility without a permit in certain counties and municipalities.
The chair recognizes Ms. Rose to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, SB 500 enhances the offense of operating a boarding home facility without the required local permit from a Class C to a Class B misdemeanor, and there is a acceptable amendment.
The following amendment, clerk read the amendment.
Amendment by Reynolds.
The chair recognizes Mr. Reynolds to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment requires the Health and Human Services Commission to review all of the existing laws related to group homes and provide recommendations for better enforceability and transparency to the public. This amendment is acceptable, and I move
Mr.
adoption.
Reynolds send up the amendment. The amendment is acceptable. The author objection to the adoption of the amendment. Chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. The chair recognizes Ms. Rose to close on the bill.
Move passage.
Question occurs on final passage of SB 500. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Ms. Rose voting aye. All members voting. There being 92 ayes, 55 nays, SB 500 is finally passed. The chair lays out a committee report, HR 253. The clerk will read the report.
HR 253 by Parker, recognizing November 2021 is Ukrainian Genocide Remembrance Month.
The chair recognizes Mr. Parker to explain the report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. House Resolution 253 recognizes November 2021 as Ukrainian Genocide Remembrance Month. From 1929 to 1953, Joseph Stalin ruled over the Soviet Union as a communist dictator. From 32 to 33, Stalin created an artificial famine in Ukraine, which resulted in the deaths of millions of innocent men, women, and children. This tragic event is known as the Holodomor. It's incumbent upon the Texas Legislature that we learn from the past and recognize the folly of authoritarian regimes. Stalin sought to punish Ukrainians for resisting his bright future of socialism. To this day, the Russian government denies that the Holodomor was genocide. Before the famine even began, Soviet secret police drove families off of their farms and deported thousands to Siberia. Ukrainian intellectuals and church leaders who recognized the cultural autonomy of Ukraine were subject to arrest and imprisonment throughout the 1920s. As people tried to flee this famine, the secret police used a draconian system of internal passports to keep people in Ukraine, thus sealing the fates of millions of innocent lives. Members, we must never forget the millions of victims who perished as a result of such despicable acts. I move passage.
Members, the question occurs on the adoption of H.R. 253. This is a record vote. Mr. Canales, for what purpose?
I'd like to have the remarks of Chairman Parker reduced to writing and placed in the journal.
Thank you.
Question occurs on the adoption of H.R. 253. This is a record vote required by the Constitution. The clerk ring the bell. Show Mr. Parker voting aye. All members voting. There being 142 ayes, 0 nays, the report is adopted. Mr. Canales moves to reduce Mr. Parker's words to the journal and put in place in the journal as objection. Chair hears none, so ordered. Dr. Bonin. The chair recognizes Dr. Bonin for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Senate Bill 1336, I move to suspend House Rule 8, Section 5D, to designate the members included on the signature list submitted by the committee chair to the chief clerk as co-sponsors.
Members, you heard the motion. The objection. Chair hears none, so ordered. Members, we have one bill that we may have to reconsider, so hang tight. And members, hang tight is an official legislative phrase, so it's in the rule book. The chair recognizes Mr. White for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend House Rule 8, Section 5D for Senate Bill 68 to designate the following member as a co-sponsor, Representative Kraus.
Members heard the motion. Objection. Chair hears none. So ordered. Members, the Speaker's desk is clear. If you have any motions, please bring them in front. Announcements. The Chair recognizes Ms. Perez for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, class of 2013. This is a reminder that tomorrow morning at 9:30, we are taking our class picture here on the House floor. Don't forget to wear your purple.
Members, Mr. Metcalf moves the House adjourned until Thursday at 10 a.m. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The House stands adjourned. Thank you, sir.